Good afternoon, everyone. Andy Jacob here with the .com magazine Entrepreneur Spotlight Series. And today's guest is Mr. James O'Connor. And I've been wanting to get James on the show for quite some time because his business, he's the director of marketing at Go Solar Group. And Go Solar Group is right in the middle of it. You know that solar is what everybody's talking about right now. So I'm so excited to have James on the show today to talk about going solar. So welcome to the show, James.
Thanks for having me, Andy. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Now, James, tell us a little bit about Go Solar. I know that you're mostly focused and concentrated in doing solar for residential homes, but let's talk a little bit about what Go Solar does from a high level to give our people some idea of your expertise and what the company has specialized in for many years.
Sure. So to understand Go Solar Group, you have to go back to 2011 when the company was founded. It was founded by two men, a father-in-law and a son-in-law. And these guys went out on a service mission trip to Africa. And it was completely unrelated to solar at the time. But while they were in Uganda, one of the things they noticed was that solar power would solve a number of problems that these people were facing, right? It would give them clean reading light. It would give them better health outcomes, better economic empowerment, and more resourcefulness. So when they returned home to the United States, they founded Go Solar Group. And they founded Go Solar Group to fund a 501c3 nonprofit called One Heart, One Mind. And essentially, for every domestic install that we complete, we microfinance a smaller solar solution for these families in Uganda homes. And since then, not only have we been able to serve that charitable cause, right? We've been able to install about 11 million watts of solar in the United States, the Western United States specifically. And for Ugandan homes, we've actually been able to build a boarding school with a headmaster. We've been able to avert 6,000 tons of carbon from the atmosphere. We've also been able to install 3,000 solar lights. So these Ugandan families have this benefit of solar power, and they're able to better educate children and have more resource to educational opportunity, because the average home in Uganda is not like the typical United States home with an Xbox, 5 TVs, computers, laptops, smartphones. You know, the kids with more clean reading light and parents who have the ability to pay for that reading light, kids will turn to the books and they'll do their schoolwork. So I think the company typifies just how powerful solar can be, not just to people in the United States, but people all over the world. And it's also, evidence of the fact that solar isn't just for wealthy people or people who, have resources, right? It's built for everybody and it can benefit everybody. So we're really happy and proud of that cause.
So James, this is a remarkable story. Two of the founders from Go Solar went to Uganda. They saw a need. This is amazing entrepreneur story. They came back to the United States. They knew that they could make an impact in the United States by providing solar power to residential homes, and at the same time have been able to participate in making some dreams come true for some people in Uganda by building a school. And I think the thing that you mentioned, a lot of people take it for granted that they get reading light in the United States to study, to go to school. And in Uganda, your company, through this charitable giving, has been able to provide light to young people so that they can learn and read and be schooled and change the world because of their advanced education. So congratulations. That's a great story.
Thank you. Yeah. And it's something that we don't abandon in tough economic times. It's who we are. It's not just part of our brand. It's what all the employees are about, and obviously what the two owners are about. And in Uganda, without these microfinance solar solutions, families were feeding off of paraffin and kerosene lanterns, which not only are more expensive than the solar solutions we were able to microfinance, they're also just not as healthy, and they have all kinds of negative effects. So it really is a unique cause, and it's one of the reasons I wanted to come work for the company, and still do to this day.
See, James, that's amazing. And I know that a lot of people watching this show are going to want to do business with you just because of the great work you're doing in Uganda by helping those families and those young people. But let's bring the lens back a little bit, and let's just say I'm a homeowner and I've heard about solar, and I've said to myself, I want to do some solar. I want to put some solar panels on my home, but I don't really know how to do it. I don't know who to call. I don't know sort of how hard or easy that process is. Could you take us through what happens when somebody that wants to get involved with the solar game calls you up, and how does it all work? How do you get solar in the home? What type of tax credits do they get? And what type of benefits do they receive by running solar in their homes?
Sure, that's a great question. So one of the biggest misconceptions, and there are a lot of misconceptions about solar power among homeowners. One of them is that it's just not worth it, right? One of the things that distinguishes our brand from other solar companies in our markets is the fact that we understand that solar doesn't work for everybody, right? We turn away people who want solar from us all the time, right? Sometimes they don't have enough electricity usage in their home to maximize the savings that they could get from solar. Sometimes the utility company incentives just don't work, like the net metering. We can get more into that later, but if you're a consumer, you really should be interested in your own decision and your reason for going solar, right? You'll have a handful of companies contacting you if you've expressed interest in solar online or given anybody your contact information. And the thing that separates our customers and people who are customers of all other solar companies as well is the fact that they understand the economics of coal-based power, right? And traditional electricity consumption. So in order to go solar, you have to have the usage to make it worthwhile, but you also need to have the investment mindset. So you can go solar for zero down, which is great, right? But you need to understand the benefit. So traditional coal-based power is what economists would call an economically inelastic product, right? Which means that regardless of whether the price fluctuates higher or lower, the demand for it is not going to change, right? Even though there are alternatives like solar power to it, consumers don't really take initiative to be as resourceful as they possibly can and go solar, right? Part of going solar is having the desire to be resourceful and self-sufficient and owning your own processes, including your electricity production within your home, not just the home itself. So traditional coal-based power, it's a non-renewable resource, which means that as it gets increasingly scarce, the price of it is inevitably going to go up. So you will get a higher and higher electricity bill as time goes on, right? And one of the benefits of solar power is that you can avoid that price hike and those huge electricity bills and save dozens of thousands of dollars by going solar, because instead of investing in a non-renewable resource like coal-based power, you're investing in the most renewable of all sources to power your home, which is the sun, right? Your investment is as surefire as the sun rising the next morning. So you can lock in a standard fixed payment, you can own your energy production, And if you have battery backup, you can power your home when the grid goes down. So it's a really unique value proposition, and it's especially relevant during the COVID pandemic in emergency preparedness type situations.
See, that makes all the sense in the world to me. So when someone calls your company and they want to do business with Go Solar, it sounds to me like it's an investment in your future, and you also take into account the current cost, and then you make a decision as a homeowner about your total overall cost savings compared to the increasing costs of traditional type energy. And then your group helps those homeowners make a decision about the best way to go. Because I think a lot of homeowners, they're a little apprehensive because maybe they feel they're not going to get the type of experts like you have over at Go Solar to kind of guide them through the waters, if you will, of solar, or guide them through the sunlight of solar, I should say. So when you meet with a customer, do you provide the different scenarios to them and then let them choose which works best for them and their families?
Yeah, so the process at this point, I think, is what becomes relevant. So regardless of whether you're watching this video and you go solar with us or you go solar with someone else or with someone else, there's something you should know, right? One of those things is that you shouldn't really go solar unless you have a high enough electricity bill, right? You want to have an electricity bill north of $50 to $75 a month at a minimum to justify getting solar, because that's when you'll really see the return on investment begin. The higher your electricity bill, the more you stand to benefit from it, right? The second thing is, the homes themselves, depending on where they're located, where your home is, the incentives are slightly different, right? One of those incentives that's different from area to area is net metering. So net metering is basically the practice of the solar modules exporting excess solar energy not used by the homeowner back onto the grid, right? And that's one of the benefits of a renewable resource like the sun powering your home is you can have surplus power. So depending on your utility company, you will get credited a certain amount of money for the power you put back onto the grid. Some utility companies credit you a lot, others don't. You want to make sure that the company you're going with, and if you go with us, you'll for sure know the incentive is going to have a good net metering policy. So one of the other things that's relevant, though, and this applies to everyone, regardless of where you live in the United States, the federal government has a tax credit for solar. So that tax credit right now is at 26% or up to 26% of the system cost, which will range and fluctuate a lot based on the size of the system that's installed. So that'll save you alone, $5,000 to $12,000 on your solar installation. So once you do that, you're locked into that rate. But the tax credit does prorate over time and will eventually be eliminated. So if you're thinking about waiting to get solar, that's probably not the best solution. Urgency tactics aside and salesmanship aside, you definitely want to do it sooner rather than later.
That makes a lot of sense. And when people put a solar system in their home, if they can't afford to pay for the whole system, like out of pocket, is there financing available to those people, or is this more of a cash and carry type of a business right now?
Yes, we absolutely do offer payment program. We look at it more as a program, right? We don't really look at it as financing because while it falls under that category, it's really more about just a plan, right? To make sure that you can pay for the system, you can benefit from it, and you can go solar for zero down, right? You have to have a requisite credit score. Depending on which company you go with, that credit score is, 650 or higher if you're not going to pay in cash. Some companies may have a higher credit score standard. Some may not have a standard at all, right? You will run into some companies who will, say that they can install you when they shouldn't, right? You may not have enough electricity consumption in your home to make solar worth it. You may not have net metering policies at all in your area that make solar financially viable. And it just may not make sense for you based on your roof type or the infrastructure of your house. So most homes in the United States can get solar power. There are exceptions to the rule, though, and just because everyone wants it doesn't mean that everyone can necessarily get it.
That's a great answer, James. So you hear a lot of people talking about living off the grid, and you hear a lot of people talking about, building their own wells for their own water and then going solar so they don't have to be sort of on that proverbial grid that they call it. So you mentioned earlier, James, that when you go solar, you can have some type of a system at your home that is almost like a battery backup, so that if something happens nationwide to the grid or something happens locally or people's electricity gets turned off for one reason or another, whether it's a hack or a terrorist attack, you still have your electric in some type of battery backup system. Is that the way that it works?
Correct. And this is where we really get into the energy independence and the resourcefulness of solar power and homeowners. So basically what battery backup does, we have a couple of different options that we can do. This is one of the things that distinguishes us from other companies. A, we actually sell battery backup, and B, we're actually credentialed and know how to install battery backup, right? We're North American Board of Certified Energy Practitioners certified. We are a certified Tesla installation partner, and we sell as a vendor their power walls. So the battery backup, I'll give you an example of how this works. So in Utah, we recently had a huge power outage. There were hundreds of thousands of homes that went without power for more than 24 hours. And since everyone's working from home during the COVID pandemic, that's a very big deal, right? That just kind of doubles down on that issue. So people who had solar and battery backup, one of our customers actually was able to power his home with the reserves he had in his power wall. And one of his neighbors, he was actually able to take an extension cable and give them power for something that was mission critical to them when their power was out. So it's like, it can help you maintain your power continuity, which is really important. We're so connected and plugged into our electricity and our power sources that we need them increasingly more often. And the more we use them and depend on these things, the more aggravating it is to lose it, right? Even if it's only just for a short period of time. So the battery backup allows you to power your home, right? When the grid goes down. And speaking of emergency preparedness, a big part of our customer base is people who are not just resourceful and want to be energy independent and own their own power, right? It's people who want to be prepared for worst case scenario type things, So that's a huge benefit of having solar, is that you don't just save money on your electricity, you can also access your electricity when others can't.
See, that's incredible. And also by going with Go Solar, you're changing the world by helping these children in Africa. So it's a great circle of sort of strength that you're putting together with your company. Now, let's talk about the cities that you're in right now. You're not nationwide yet, but I'm sure you have plans to do that. But let's talk about the cities that you serve and where Go Solar currently is doing their business.
Sure. So when we were founded in 2011, we headquartered ourselves in Salt Lake City. That was our main market for 5 or 6 years, right? Then we decided that we wanted to grow, and we were in a good position to start growing. So from there, we went into Reno, Nevada, and then into San Antonio, Texas. And we've also done some work in the Santa Fe, Albuquerque, New Mexico area. And we're looking at perhaps expanding into the East Coast in 2021 in one of the North or South Carolina areas.
Beautiful. Now, part of my naivety, but I have to ask the question because I was thinking about it leading up to the interview with you, James, is so let's say we pick a place like Detroit, Michigan, where they don't get sun as often as a place like, let's say, Salt Lake City. So in terms of solar, the batteries are good enough now to be able to take the solar from the sun for, let's say, the 100 days a year that Detroit has sun versus the 220 days a year that Salt Lake City has sun. How does all that work with regard to solar energy for homes and the area of the country that the home sits in based on the weather?
Right. So that is that's a relevant question. So one of the misconceptions is that, if clouds are covering the sky, or it's maybe overcast outside, or it's raining, that the panels still can't absorb light. They actually can. So the UV rays from the sun can go straight through clouds, overcast, right? And they can still hit your panels. It's not evident to the naked eye, right? But it's still able to happen. That transduction process of taking the electrical current into the panel and putting it into usable format in the home. Now, there are times of year when things like snow can happen, right? Depending on where you live, then that's when you really have more of a disadvantage in terms of, power you can produce with your panels. But even then, a simple solution like a roof rake, will help, right? People can get on a ladder, and we don't necessarily advise people do this because it can be risky, right? But if you're solar powered, you're self-sufficient, you probably have a can-do attitude. You may want to go up there and just kind of scrape the snow off the panels with a gentle roof rake, and then the panels will start producing just fine, right?
Yeah.
So the weather does kind of affect what can happen with snow, but in terms of overcast, things like that, not too big of an issue. There are areas of the United States where solar has grown a ton very quickly because they just have more sun hours, right? The, Phoenix, Arizona's, the Los Angeles, California's, the whole Sun Belt really is viable in that sense. So that matters, but you can still see a great return on investment regardless of where you install your panels, as far as the weather is concerned, if that makes sense.
That does, James. So if I have one of your solar systems installed at my home, and I decided to also have the battery backup, and I'm sitting there with my completely installed system right now, how do I know how the system is responding? How do I know how much battery backup is filled up? How do I know from a system standpoint that my system is working well and it's efficient? Do I get some type of feedback loop? Is there an app I get to go on, or is there something that I get to see in my home that tells me what's happening with my system?
Sure. So when we install a system, what happens is you'll have, if you do the power wall, we'll have an app for that tells you how much power is in there, how much you've used, things like that. And if you do just the residential panels, right, then you're also going to have an app for production, right? And sometimes, I think most recently, we've had an update where it'll be able to tell you savings, right, on a day-to-day basis or a month-to-month basis as well. So you'll be wired up to all kinds of different apps, should you choose, that'll measure, monitor, and ensure the continuity of your power consumption.
And when I put in a solar system, and again, pardon me for asking such simple questions, but I think a lot of our viewers and a lot of people really have these questions, and maybe they're just too afraid to ask sometimes. So when I put in a solar system, do I need to change out anything within my house? Do I need to change out any wiring, or do I need to change out any outlets, or anything from an electrical standpoint, panels? Do I need to change any of that out, or is that all stay the way that it's always been with the traditional energy source?
So things will be changed, but I encourage homeowners to not focus on the changes, because the installer will take care of all of that for you, right? It's a pretty complicated electrical process, right? So a lot of people will sometimes make the mistake of saying, I'm going to do a DIY solar project. I'm going to do it yourself. So one of the byproducts of being resourceful and energy independent is there's certain other personality traits that co-occur with that, like a propensity for wanting to do DIY projects, right? But unless you're a master electrician and you're certified to do solar installation specifically, we would strongly advise against doing that because of its complexity. So leave it up to the installer. If you have questions for them, they'll be able to answer. I myself am not an expert by any means in that regard, so I won't say too much more about that, but you can trust us as an installer and other installers to handle the process for you up front. There's very little, if anything, that you will have to change on your end to make sure that the install goes correctly. They'll take care of it for you.
That's amazing. And your company, of course, Go Solar, is known for sort of a seamless integration. Let's talk about how long it takes for a customer, once they respond or request your services, James. How long does it take for you to go through the analysis with them and then actually do the installation so that they're up on solar? What's the time frame, the time period that it takes to get up once I contact your company?
Sure. So once we get your information, you qualify for solar, you have the requisite credit, you're a verified homeowner, you have enough energy usage in your home. From there, we'll put together the free customized quote based off the usage, which rolls through the incentives, estimated savings. We can't guarantee savings or production, but we can give you a strong estimate of what's likely to happen based off your electricity consumption patterns. So from there, what happens is we sell you the panels, right? And then from there, we go into a process of permitting and inspection and then installation, right? So it'll vary from area to area, how long it takes, depending on the utility company, how stringent they are in their oversight of what solar companies are doing in their installations, how backlogged they may be, right, in terms of how many installations they're trying to push through in a given month. But one of our value propositions is we do tend to install much faster than typical companies. So we try to do our installations within 4 to 12 weeks, to go from the whole process of getting the quote, qualifying, sitting down with them, selling the panels, and then going through the permitting and the inspection and the installation process.
See, that makes a lot of sense. And what I really like, what I'm hearing, James, is I'm a homeowner. I reach out to you at Go Solar. I maybe send you over a few of my electric bills or power bills, and you do an analysis for me, and you offer me options, and you tell me to the best of your ability what it looks like, what I'm going to be looking at in terms of the cost of installation, what my savings are going to be, what my long-term savings are going to be. And I'm almost looking at this, I think, in terms of almost an investment, because this is a long-term investment for my future. And when you look at it over a period of years, I would imagine that you have some amazing success stories from people that are just thrilled with doing business with you. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things people have to understand is, solar is not cheap, but you're absolutely right. You have to have an investment mindset, because we're talking about a payoff that compounds over the course of 50 years, right? Systems are warranted for typically 15 to 20 years, but even after that, most of them will produce at 80% production efficiency from when they were installed for decades after that. So it's absolutely an investment, and you're right. That's how we encourage people to look at it. And so we want people to look at it in two ways, right? We want them to look at it as an investment, right? And we want them to look at it as having a sense of control. So if we were to compare, a solar energy investment, right, in your own modules for your home to a stock or bond kind of investment, it would be like the safest kind of stock or bond you could have. We're talking like United States Treasury bond safe, right? Like you will get a return, right? Because as I mentioned earlier, the economics of the coal-based power and the scarcity that comes with that, along with some of the utility companies, perpetuating the idea that solar isn't viable, just compounds into the misconception that you can't save a lot of money with solar.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, James, we've spoken about sort of the economics of solar. We've spoken about this other amazing thing that you're doing by helping these children and families in Africa as part of this mission to bring light into the world. And we really haven't spoken much about sort of the impact on the environment. So I think at this point, let's talk about that a little bit. What type of impact, positive impact, does going solar have on the environment?
Well, it's just cleaner, right? It's fewer emissions. Some people have qualms with the way the panels are manufactured in terms of environmental friendliness. Right. Anything that's manufactured, it's tough to be 100% perfectly environmentally friendly. Right. But once the panels are made and sold and installed in mass, right, we're talking about a drastic reduction in emissions. And we're talking about an improved planet. Right. We're talking about cleaner power, better health. Right. The air quality is increasingly linked to all kinds of injurious health conditions. And so there's really no environmental downside to it for you as the consumer. No process is environmentally perfect in terms of industry, right? We can look at nature and see that everything in nature is environmentally perfect. But one of the things that is usually a good indicator you're doing something right is if you're selling and at least in terms of environmental friendliness, is if you're selling a product that relies on something in the environment to power it, right? Which is all forms of renewable energy, wind, solar power, right? Whether commercial or residential. So the impact is huge. It'll become compounded and even greater over time as more people inevitably turn to solar. Because within 100 years, everything's going to be powered by solar. I don't really see any way around that, right? So that doesn't mean you should wait. You definitely want to capitalize on the incentives while you can. But the environment and the scarcity of our existing power sources is going to force us into a state of solar dependency, where we'll be able to globally impact the world in a positive way, which has better health outcomes and for humans and for the planet.
James, obviously this is an amazing thing where people can not only save money on their electric bills, they can become independent, they can participate in a philanthropic opportunity to help people in Africa, and they're helping the environment. So this is really a 4-for-4 type of a 4-star program. If I'm looking at your company right now and I want to get a hold of Go Solar, who do I call? How do I get a hold of you? How do I start talking about this process?
Sure. So you'll want to go to gosolargroup.com, and you'll want to go to the website, and we have a great blog with tons of great information. And you'll want to educate yourself if you have questions. We have content about just everything on there solar related. So you can go and check that out. And you can go to the contact us link on the website and send in an inquiry letting us know you're interested. I'd also encourage people to use the solar savings calculators, which we've programmed based on area incentives. So that'll give you kind of a sneak peek of what you could save. And if you like what you see from there, you can submit your information and we'll be sure to get in touch with you and see if you qualify for it.
This is awesome. This is everything and more of what I thought this interview would be, James. You're an amazing spokesperson for the Go Solar Group. I know that they must be very happy to have you. And if you're any indication of the type of team that they've been able to put together over there, the two founders that originally went to Africa to see that the people needed some energy and then built this into a wonderful business. You've got an amazing team, and I'm sure people are going to want to reach out to you and do business with you because this is as solid as it comes. And I wanted to thank you for being on the show today, James. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andy. I appreciate it.